What's up, everyone, and welcome to the 22nd episode of the Control Freak Podcast. I am your host, Alex Blackard, or at LessAlex on Twitter. Make sure to go follow me there. We are sponsored, as always, by Team Solitary Pro. Their information will be in the description below. And by our patrons, which we have two new patrons. Shout out to Chris Fox and Jacob Brockman. Thanks for becoming patrons. And if you too would like to support the content further, head on over to patreon.com/LexAlex and consider becoming a patron. Today, I am super excited to be joined by our special guest, Drake Sasser. He is a 6-time Open top 8 with 2 wins and 3 SCG Classic wins. And he just won the SCG Open in Indianapolis with Gift Storm. Not to mention he's in 7th place in SCG Season 2 leaderboard. Additionally, you're sponsored by Team Nova and am a writer for Hipsters of the Coast. Drake, how's it going? That was a mouthful, man.
That was quite the mouthful. So many accolades. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
I'm doing great. I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome.
Super excited to talk about Modern and talk about Storms. So it's great.
Absolutely. So my listeners are accustomed to getting right into the content. So let's get into it. Are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
Awesome. So as we just stated, you just won SCG Indy with Gift Storm. With that in mind, do you think it's good for the current Modern meta?
So, in my winner's interview, I talked a little bit about what I thought of Storm going forward. And that was on SCG after the broadcast, after the final match.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to realize why I chose Storm and why it was a good option for that weekend to kind of really be able to talk about where it's at going forward, right? So to set the stage for SCG Indianapolis, there was a lot of hype, especially after SCG Philly the week prior, the team event. There's a lot of hype around the Urza variants that had paradoxical outcome in them, and so that was the most recent development. They played, paradoxical outcome, the new Emery card, and had more zero drop artifacts to try to enable all that. But in general, they had a rather slow actual kill. Like, they weren't killing people very quickly. And Amulet Titan also was on the rise again, and so. And in fact, it won in the hands of my teammate, Matthew Dilks. So there's a lot of hype around Amulet, a lot of hype around Urza. And in my opinion, through testing, I didn't like the Urza decks very much. Like I said, it felt a little too slow for the Modern format. And it felt like Amulet was actually the best deck for the weekend in SCG Indy. So I ended up playing Storm because it felt like if I couldn't join them, I should just beat them, right? And so Absolutely. Storm, having access to Remand, allowed you to pretty profitably interact with the expensive spells both those decks are trying to cast, while offering a similar Goldfish. You can still kill on turn 3 pretty consistently. You can kill at turn 4 most of the rest of the time that you're not interacted with, as long as your creature, your 2-mana creature isn't dying.
Yeah.
And so I chose Storm for the tournament, and it definitely seemed good against the winners metagame, but there is a little bit of risk because you do still have to play at day 1, and your Storm matchup is not very good at all. So it ended up working out. I ended up dodging Storm. Was my one loss day 1. But overall, I think going forward, it's going to be a lot worse because I expect people to pick up the graveyard hate again and the removal spells.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, for our listeners, because this is kind of centered around control, to your point, rest in peace. Don't cut them. I know that the Miracles builds are really, really popular right now, myself included. I love the fact that Entreat the Angels won a big Magic the Gathering. That makes me so happy. But at the same time, I do not think ×4 Mystic Sanctuary moving forward is the correct call because there's going to be more graveyard hate.
Right, and I think that is. I think that's going to end up being one of the draws of Blue-Eye Control is like the fact you can support a card like Rest in Peace that's very good against the Urza decks, which I think are the better Urza decks. It's good against Storm, good against the Vine and Dredge decks. You saw a Dredge in top 8 of SCG and D as well. So There's a lot of decks trying to utilize the graveyard and leverage the fact that there is not a lot of graveyard hate being played. And Blue-White being able to support Rest in Peace allows you to just pretty freely pick up wins in those matches.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, as in terms of a deck like Dredge, you literally cannot beat that deck without Rest in Peace if you're blue-white control. Like,
they are going to outgrind you.
You could have all of the snap wraths you want. They're so good at grinding.
They're going to come back again. I mean, they also have that burn plan where they just creeping chill you and then conflagrate you out. They're like a graveyard burn deck too if they kill other creatures. It's an unbelievably powerful deck when it does.
Yeah, the deck is still very good even though it doesn't have Faithless Looting.
Correct.
So cool. What about the current open field? What would you take to a tournament? And what would you suggest other folks play in an open field tournament?
Right. So obviously the two are going to be different, right? I still think that Amulet Titan is the best deck for an open field. Like, people aren't sleeving up Blood Moons. They don't have a lot of effective land hate. Like, Fulminator Mage, like, seems really good on paper against the Amulet Titan deck because they have the bounce lands and stuff like that. Yeah. They can do a lot to mitigate that card by just holding up their 1-mana creatures, right? The 1-mana 1/1 that like lets you tap and put a land into play.
Yep.
That lets them essentially flash in a land drop, which can be a bounce land, and they can just pick up their land in response to a Fulminator Mage. So just playing like Stone Rain effects like that isn't effective enough. Damping Sphere is a very beatable card.
Yeah.
Because they have main deck Reclamation Sage, and they just have to tutor it up, and kill your thing, and they can even sometimes cast the Titan in the same turn because all their mana ends up unlocked, and they still have access to a lot of colors on their like single color lands like Gemstone Mine and Castle Carenbreg, where Blood Moon would shut those off. So it's just like Damping Sphere is less effective than Blood Moon is, and there's a lot more Damping Spheres than Blood Moon. So I still think Amulet Titan being able to present this resilient clock, they're able to kill you. I mean, as early as turn 2, but pretty consistently on turns 3 and 4, as well as having that big mana effect to be good against like the fair decks. And they also picked up Field of the Dead to that end. Makes it the best choice for an open field.
Field of the Dead has really shifted the matchup from Blue White's perspective too. Like, it used to be, you just path all their Titans, and you're like, all right, what you got? Like, you're gonna beat me down with Steve's? Like,
kill me with your Sakura Tribe Scouts.
Yeah.
The Field of the Dead is just so unbelievable for that deck.
And now it's like it's probably one of the worst matchups for blue-white control now.
That's quite a flip, right? It's quite a flip. And like even a Field of the Dead can help, but there's still like 1 or 2 extra zombies lying around that you still need to find an answer to that will kill you eventually. Like, they're not a super slow clock.
Yeah.
So I think Amulet Titan is the best choice for an open field if you know how to play the deck, but I still don't. I didn't in Indy. That's why I played Storm, and I still don't to this point in time. So what I've been looking pretty hard at is Urza. I think that deck is the better Urza variant, and I think it has a fairly good Amulet matchup, as well as just game against a lot of the rest of the field. You have Prison Pieces for matchups that are trying to do unfair things, and you have the Thopter Sword combo for people trying to do fair things. And I think that's a really attractive draw to the Urza variant over like the outcome decks and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it can grind surprisingly well. Like, it's very, very well suited to just grind you out.
Agreed. So that's kind of where I'm looking. I think Humans might be a sleeper pick too.
Oh,
but
wow,
that
really?
It lacks some inherent power. But yeah, I think Humans is a deck that people aren't really respecting that much. It goes back to that. There's still not enough removal being played. A couple more people picked up some Fatal Pushes and stuff like that. But like, I still don't think that there is enough, and that Humans is picked up a lot in the matchups like Amulet Titan and the Urza decks. Like, I think Thalia is very effective. The Amulet decks no longer play cards like Hornet Queen or Walking Ballista in the main, which were big problems for the Humans deck. So like, the Humans matchup against Amulet has improved a lot. I think Humans is going to have a naturally pretty good matchup against Urza. But once again, you kind of get down to the people playing Ren and 6 and Plague Engineer. You're going to have trouble in those matchups.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes sense. So you heard it here. Humans going to win the next Open.
I don't know about all that.
Nope. So obviously we're recording on the Monday prior to this episode coming out. It'll be coming out next Monday, or today if you're listening to this. But we just had a banned and restricted announcement. So no bans. People were thinking that no bans in Modern, because this is obviously a Modern podcast. But yeah, no bans in Modern. What are your thoughts on that? Mox Opal dodges another BNR.
Yeah, I don't know how long they're going to let that card do its thing. Like, how many Mox Opal decks have to, get banned out of Modern before we really look at the problem? Like, there's already Affinity Artifacts banned. We had to
Yep.
ban KCI. Like, how many times do we have to ban artifact decks before we
It's like at this point, it really does seem to me that they're kind of treating it how they treat the vintage shops deck, and they're just banning everything around it. And they're just like, all right, nothing to see here, like Bird Box style. Like, don't look.
Yeah, don't face the truth that Mox
don't
Opal
face the
isn't
truth.
gonna,
It's not Mox
yeah,
Opal's
isn't
fault.
helping.
Like we're gonna start wearing shirts that like it's not Mox Opal's fault or Mox Opal was right. Like
Yeah, Mox Opal did nothing wrong.
right.
Yeah, no, the card is frustrating. I mean, especially since I don't really consider myself a Mox Opal player. I like my Spire Bluff Canals and my blue and red spells, my horrible cantrips that exist in the Modern format. So like, I really enjoyed the Is It Phoenix days. I enjoyed the Faithless Looting format. I actually didn't think that Faithless Looting should have been banned, but that's a talk people aren't ready for, and I'm sorry if I offended anybody on the cast. But I mean, I was a big proponent of the Is It Phoenix deck. I put a lot of work into that deck, and it was some of the most fun I had playing Magic.
As a control player, I appreciate that because we just hammered that deck.
We'll see. I didn't lose much to blue-eye control, but the matchup was very skill intensive in my opinion. So I think some better blue-eye players would have stopped me.
That's fair. Oh man, that's good stuff.
But
so
yeah, I mean,
what's that?
I said just like the head of SCG Atlanta, which I guess is going to have resolved by the time that people are listening to this podcast.
Sure. Yep.
I fully expect like 2 to 3 Mox Opal decks in top 8 of SCG Atlanta. The decks are still some of the best things you can be doing in the format, and like Mox Opal dodging a ban, I don't think is justified, even if like the format's not being like actively run over. Like I still think the Mox Opal decks are a problem, even if the format's not just like 7 out of the 8 top 8 is Mox Opal decks.
Yeah. No, to that point, I think like the way that Wizards has kind of been doing bannings is like they're like basically show us, right?
Yeah, prove
like
to me
break the format is basically what they're saying, and then that's how you get like what 7 or 5 of the top 8 decks from that PTB Hogak or whatever it was.
Yeah, the Hogak numbers were just unbelievable.
It was abysmal. It was like old school, like standard Jason the Mind Sculptor Callblade era. Nut stuff. So speaking of just blue-white decks in general, how do you think? I know you're not necessarily a blue-white control player, but how do you think they're positioned in the current metagame?
So I have a lot of love for Celestial Colonnade. I have some really sweet 401s in a box
You like
somewhere.
the big 4/4 Guildgate? Okay.
Oh yeah, big fan of Azorius Guildgate, but they stay on the shelf these days. But I mean, no, seriously, Blue Eye Control is a deck that I think is better now than it's been in a long time, which I'm sure is what a lot of the podcast wants to hear.
Yeah,
but
right.
Like,
everybody's just like,
yeah, like you're a deck that does play removal. You're a deck that does play graveyard hate, and these are some of the holes in the modern format that a lot of decks are exploiting. Sure. And so, if you come packing with good efficient removal and good graveyard hate, as well as a good proactive plan, like a lot of the Spark Planeswalkers help with that.
Yeah,
and you also picked up Force Negation to let you trade up on mana, which is something that Blue Eye Control has been missing in Modern for a long time, is like the ability to trade up on mana at the cost of cards, because Blue Eye Control has plenty of card advantage sources, right? Like that's never been the problem with Blue White. That's why the cards like Ancestral Vision and stuff like that didn't just break Blue White wide open. The deck has plenty of card advantage. What the deck needed was efficient trades. They needed some tempo positive plays, even at the cost of cards, that they can use their card advantage sources to recoup later. So Force Negation, huge pickup. I mean, all of you, I'm sure, know that. And I think that all of those cards are extremely well positioned right now.
Yeah, and that's one thing that a lot of folks I talk to about Force Negation in general, they're like, you're 2-for-1ing yourself. Like, how is this good? It's like, yes, you're 2-for-1ing yourself, but you're doing it to not lose the game, to literally not lose the game. Like, you let that Summoner's Pact resolve, bro, you're dead. If you don't have, if you know what I mean, like.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So I actually do think blue white decks are okay. Like they're still not something I'm going to play because they not having a proactive game plan has a real cost in a format like Modern. And that's why something like Storm was such a good metagame call, because yes, it is well positioned, But on top of being well positioned, you also have a very good proactive game plan where if you're playing against random nonsense deck, you still just have a turn 3 kill. So if they're trying to set up do some kind of nonsense prison thing, just kill them.
Right.
And you can always just randomly kill them if their hand doesn't function.
Yeah, it's always the thing, like you pass back as any deck really in Modern. You pass back to the turn 3 of Storm and you're like, all right.
Yeah.
Do you got it? Am I
you got
dead?
A creature in play. Am I dead? Shield's down. Couldn't kill your creature. Am I dead?
Yep.
So
it's kind of like fingers crossed. Am I dead? Like it's
which is a problem that humans has too. Like humans has a little more proactive game plan, but overall is like fairly slow. Like oftentimes they're killing on like 5 and 6.
Yeah.
And so that may actually hold the humans deck back a little bit. Is their plan isn't as proactive as a deck like Storm, which makes it a worse metagame call. And like I said, Blue-White suffers the same problem. But overall, I actually think Blue-White decks can succeed, and you saw that with them winning the Classic in Indianapolis. So
yeah, it's interesting, right? Because like Blue-White is one of those decks where if you draw the correct half of your deck, and I know that Jun's kind of the same way, like you feel like you cannot lose if you draw like against humans, if you draw like double path Celestial Purge in sideboard, you're like, oh, this game's over, right?
Easy.
Yeah, exactly. But like if you draw the other half, it's like, oh boy, we just can't win.
We are in some trouble.
Right?
No, you're right. You're right.
Insert the gif of the little dog with the house on fire. I'm in danger. Like,
yeah, this is fine.
This is fine. Yeah, there it is. Oh man. Okay, so with all that being said, which version of Blue-White / Blue-White Control / Stoneblade would you play if you were going to, kick the tires on the idea?
So I do like the idea of Stoneblade. Kyle Bogamus, you saw played Azorius Stoneblade in Indianapolis. Big fan of what he has going on. It's a very smart Magic player, and I would trust a lot of his decision making. So I would look at his list and kind of take as much as I can from that. Also, I would do everything in my power to avoid the card Mystic Sanctuary. I dislike that card.
The hottest takes.
I don't know if it's even that hot.
No,
this card is just not. It's not it for me. Like maybe you could play one. I could see playing one. But this card it's a nice thing to have access to, but if it's your land on turn 1, like I'm sorry, Azorius Guildgate isn't very good in Modern. Guess what? Mono Blue Guildgate also isn't good. And so like this deck already has enough mana problems, and like asking it to have 4 specific islands on turn 4 to like get a spell back is just not, the payoff's just not worth it, not there for me. Like it's maybe fine as a one of because it's pretty free to include, but in general, I think playing more than one is just a mistake. And I think the Miracles thing is way too off the deep end.
I thought, like, I was testing 3, and I cut it right before the tournament. I was like, nope, it's not, it ain't it. It ain't for me.
Yeah, this is not, I'm not here for it.
That's one thing, too, that a lot of Blue-White or new Blue-White players I hear talk about, oh, this mana is great. No, the Blue-White mana base is choppy at best. Like, we're playing 4 or even 5 sometimes if you want to include the Gaia Reach Sanitarium, just colorless lands. So that's already bad. And then you got 2 basically guild gates with the colonnades, like, and now we're adding another. Like, think about, you have Cryptic Command up against Storm, and you just have this basically a guild gate entering tapped, and then they just kill you because you couldn't. If that would have been an island, you just do the thing. They're probably not even going to go for it on turn 4.
Oh yeah, with 4 mana up, almost certainly not. Whereas you have 3 mana up, like the range decreases a lot.
Yeah. Like, oh, just don't play 4, please. I said this on the last episode, but please don't play 4.
Your mana base is where a lot of players, I think, especially Blue-White players, mess things up. Is because 4 colonnades not correct. You want to untap lands for your cards, and you have to keep in mind that you're a Supreme Verdict. You're a Supreme Verdict deck. You're also a Cryptic Command deck. Like these are some heavy color requirements. Like you need to respect that. Like Field of Ruin's nice, but the card is not free to include.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah, and I actually I had this sweet game at regionals where I was playing Wurza, and I just like deliberately played out basics and fetched basics to keep my Blue-Eyed opponent from having a Field of Ruin target, and they just got stuck on like a Field of Ruin or 2 and like an island and just never had a target.
Yeah, that is all these like snow decks, including the Wurza deck. They are really putting a glaring spotlight on how shaky the Blue-White mana base can be. And people are like I get DMs like, what do you think about Jeskai control? Not a chance in hell. No.
Bolt is not where you
Bolt
want to be
is
in this
not
format
even
either.
good. Like,
Yeah, well, this is some of the worst Bolt's been
yeah.
in Modern. It's been one of the best cards in Modern at times, and it's not it, Chief. Fatal Push
Yep.
is the new Bolt in this format.
Yep. Absolutely agree with that. Absolutely agree. Um, Wizards of the Coast just announced a brand new format. We're going to kind of shift gears here, but what are your thoughts on the brand new format, Pioneer? And for those that don't know, it's a new non-rotating format that starts at Return to Ravnica, and much like Legacy and Modern, it's going from RTR forward. So what are your initial thoughts? And then I got a couple follow-up questions, but what are your initial thoughts on it?
So my initial thoughts are a lot of excitement, and there's a little bit of confusion. So
Yeah,
I guess let's do some setting the stage.
sure.
Yeah, they announced Pioneer today as part of the ban announcement. It's just something they attached on. They also announced there's going to be some Pioneer GPs next year, and
Yep.
that the Players Tours, I guess the PT
The PT,
variant
yeah.
now, is going to be Pioneer as well. And winning Indy actually qualified me for that Players Tour, so I'm actually going to be playing this Pioneer format, in some of the earliest days of it at a professional level, and
Yeah.
that's a
One
little daunting but extremely exciting.
one thing I want to point out too is there's a huge similarity people are pointing out between Frontier and Pioneer. Frontier was a player, uh, you know, it was a player created format. This is Wizards of the Coast saying, we're going to put resources, we're going to put money into this format. And people are like, oh, well, it's going to fail just like Frontier. No, 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 no. Pioneer is here to stay. And the fact that, you are directly affected by this.
Yeah.
You
And
have
it's
to go out and learn this format before anyone else.
yeah, it's going to be on Magic Online as of Wednesday, so that's
Yeah.
super quick turnaround.
Oh, yeah.
And like I said, the biggest difference between Frontier and Pioneer is that Pioneer is going to be supported.
Yeah.
Whereas Frontier was completely player made. It was made by the shop in, I think, Japan. But Pioneer is already hitting the ground running with GPs
Yeah.
for the format, pro tours for the format. So it's just these heavy hitting, high level players playing it at the highest level. It's going to be so much more supported. And I mean, Pioneer is also a little bigger than Frontier was. I think Frontier started with all of the newest frame stuff. So I think it was M15 or Magic Origins Forward some point in there. So you can fact check that, but it was basically it was a little earlier. Whereas this format is going to start at Return to Ravnica, come forward, and the fetch lands are all banned.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good move. I'm really excited
I
with
agree.
the way that they're approaching that. And Aaron Forsyth on Twitter said that they're going to be very proactive in monitoring the ban list, especially as MTGO data starts to roll through, and they're actually going to be just firing the cannons at things that need to be banned off of schedule. They're not going to wait for a ban list to update this ban list.
And I think that's super interesting because I know a lot of people are concerned with basically all of Kaladesh block, the entire block, and dig through time and those delve cards basically. Yeah.
So banning fetchlands does help the delve card problem. But I mean, if you just look at Frontier, I think you can pull a lot of what could potentially be good based on what was good in that format. And the Atarka Red aggro decks were really, really good in that format.
Absolutely.
And the Saheeli Copycat deck was really good in that format.
Oh, yeah.
So these are decks that support turn 4-ish kills. And I think that's going to be very defining for the Pioneer format. I think that this format is going to be closer in power level to what Modern is than what Standard is.
Sure.
And I think that overall, I expect Pioneer to be pretty successful. A lot of people really like the Ravnica block, so having it started RTR was really smart. Yeah. And discluding some of the broken stuff from the Innistrad block, like Grizzlebrand, Faithless Looting, all those kinds of cards. Thought Scour, especially with Delve cards legal. Oh, yeah. I think dodging all of that stuff was really smart, even though people really liked the Innistrad block. So I think there was obviously a lot of thought put into this format, and I think it's going to be well supported. The thing that really confuses me about this format is why they released it, especially when they haven't even finished putting up any kind of props for the historic format. This is a format that's obviously not going to be on Arena because there's just too much programming to do, and the developers are having a little bit of trouble keeping up as it is. There's performance problems with Arena and stuff like that.
Yep.
So this format is clearly not coming to Arena anytime soon, and is already on Magic Online. And so with Wizards seeming to push Magic Arena as the future of playing Magic, right? Like this is what Magic as an esport is going to look like.
Sure.
It's weird to me that they are almost stepping on their own toes by like creating a more interesting and more supported Eternal format that's newer than Modern. That's not going to be on Arena, especially when they had already laid the groundwork for a format that did the very same thing.
And to that point too, it's like when they released the notes or the announcement for Historic, no one cared. Like, no one cared. And then they released this today, and I'm looking at Smuggler's Copters are $9. They were $1.50 this morning.
Twitter exploded.
Dude,
just everyone has ideas. Like the Nova already created a channel for Pioneer Talk. Like it's just nonstop. My DMs were exploding today about Pioneer.
Yeah, and Arena Deck Lists, the podcast with Jerry T and Brian Gottlieb, they created a Twitter for Pioneer Deck Lists. So at them if you got a spicy brew, I guess.
Yeah. So like there's a lot to be excited about, and Pioneer has a lot of ground to cover. There's going to be a Pioneer Challenge on Magic Online, so that's a pretty high profile event.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of eyes on that week one results for Pioneer, so I expect it to be a pretty big event. And like I said, the leagues fire up on Wednesday, and I'm really excited about this format. I'm really excited to talk about this format. It's actually it's unfortunate that I have to spend so much time focusing on Modern when that's been my focus for the last like 3 or 4 weeks. Like I've been doing so much Modern testing. They're like, I'm kind of like, ugh, like I've done a lot of Modern, and now there's this new exciting like Christmas toy I want to play with. I gotta continue putting my reps into Modern. I mean, Magic's Magic, so I'm glad there's more to be excited about and more things to play and explore in Magic.
Yeah,
that's why I love this game. But
this is I always joke with folks that this is a niche inside of a niche inside of a niche podcast, because it's a Magic the Gathering podcast with a Modern podcast with a Blue Eye Control podcast. But like anything that gets people stoked gets me stoked, because Magic is great, and I'm really excited for this. And come on, who listening to this podcast doesn't want to go Torrential Gearhulk my dig through time?
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. That's just everything I want to do in life.
Oh yeah. I expect this format to be kind of a control player's paradise, right? Because like your interaction is fair, but like your payoffs are so good. Like you have the 5 minutes of fairy, the 3 minutes of fairy, you get Sphinx's Revelation, Detention Sphere, Supreme Verdict. Like, do you remember how good these cards are? Because they're real good. They all saw Modern play and still
Drake,
do.
I remember. It hurts my heart every time I look in my binder and see my foil Sphinx's Revelation and can't put it in my deck in Modern. And finally, all 4 of them, bloop, 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 bloop.
Sphinx's Revelation is actually my favorite card of all time. There's a little fun fact. And so, like, anything gets me playing that card again, I am in. I'm so excited.
Absolutely. I'm stoked for Pioneer. I'm not going to say this is going to turn into a Pioneer podcast or anything, but we're definitely going to talk about it if it starts, popping. And if a good blue control deck is at all playable, I'm going to definitely want to talk about it, because it has the brewer's juices just flowing right now.
Oh, absolutely. And it's Modern adjacent. It counts.
Yeah. It's Modern Light, basically. It's like Modern without all the nonsense from like Blood Moon and all that nonsense.
Oh yeah, I'm very happy to be away from 8th edition. Like, ugh,
no Tron. Let's go.
No, oh yeah, you love to see it. Control players rejoice. Yeah. Tron is vanquished.
And no Primeval Titan.
That's true too. All the big mana goes away.
Yep. Well, there's still Golos, Field of the Dead,
and Scapeshift.
Yeah.
So and they have Veil of Summer. So all right, you have your work cut out for you.
Yeah.
At least a new problem.
So what do you think about a Tarka Red with Hazoret?
I mean, I think that deck's gonna be really good. I don't know if Hazoret's where they want to be. Like I said, Hazoret's a little slow in my opinion.
Sure.
But like, if you look back to the Atarka Red decks that played like Zergo, Bell Striker, and like they had the Become Immense Teamer Battle Rage combo going on, like I think that has the chance to be really, really powerful. Especially because there's not a lot of good 1-mana removal. It's basically Fatal Push, end of line. Like you have like Fiery Impulse and a couple other spells that are like a little playable, but like the 1-mana removal spells in Pioneer are not good.
You could even play Ramunap Ruins in that deck too.
I imagine they will. I mean, it's
Yeah,
fairly free to include and does cover you from flooding. So I
absolutely.
think you're going to see Ramunap runes for sure. I mean, Atarka's Command's a powerful card. Some of the token makers. You have Rabble Master and Legion Warboss. So you have 8 Rabble Masters that the red decks can play.
That's gas.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on with the red decks and a lot to explore just in the red decks alone. Like
So
normally people are like, ooh, boo, boring, but
yeah,
like Eidolon of the Great Revel, like you have all these angles for the red decks that are going to
what
be.
I'm hearing is we need a timely reinforcements reprint stat if this
Timely
control
reinforcement.
deck is going to be able to put up with this nonsense Atarka red deck.
That's fair. That's fair. Come on, you got like Lyras and stuff. You can play some Baneslayer Angels and put them in the red deck's face.
Yeah,
Cards like Blessed Alliance. You got a few tools, but yeah, you're right. Like we probably do need a better like aggro hoser,
yeah.
or we're gonna see this format pretty run over pretty quickly.
Oh yeah, definitely. um, so kind of shifting gears again. We talked about a lot of Magic stuff. How do you choose a deck when you're preparing for a tournament?
So this is gets a lot to what like testing philosophy is about. And
Sure.
like I said, I have a lot of sources of information just being on Team Nova. We have a testing team and everyone's usually exploring their own space with like one or two other people. Like it's pretty impossible to get anything coherent and organized together by putting the whole team in a Discord call. So usually you have different people working on different things.
Sure.
Like, Dom and Akarvi is working on Tron. Harlan's working on Wurza, and I'm working on usually like I was working on Storm this last time. So like all of us are kind of working on our own space and sharing notes. And sometimes the time constraints get cut off to where people aren't really able to share, aren't able to like get everyone else up to speed. So like you just kind of end up playing what you were working on, which is an unfortunate drawback.
Yeah.
But it does come down a lot to sharing information, and it comes down to working with a insufficient sample size, because I'm not going to have concrete, just verifiable data just from playing a few leagues in a week before a tournament. Like I just don't. That's not going to be good enough
Right.
data. So what you have to operate on is the feel, and that's something that a lot of players don't get on the surface. People love to get attached to their moto results. They're like, I went 3-2 with this deck, but I went 4-1 with this deck, so I'm playing the deck I 4-1 with. There's been times I have like played a deck I 3-2'd with when I had 5-0'd with something else. Like it's much more about how powerful does the deck feel. Like there's times I feel like I got unlucky to 3-2, and there's some decks where I felt like I got lucky to 3-2. And like that is the feel that I'm talking about. My actual record matters very little to me when I'm testing.
Okay.
And my like win percentage matters very little. And so I choose decks by taking an idea. I theory craft an idea of a deck I think is good. I play like a league with it, a nice little 5-match sample size, and I make a decision on whether this deck feels like it's powerful enough. If it feels like it's missing something, like there's a hole in its game plan, I'll try to fix that. And if I think that that's all that's wrong with it, then I'll definitely give it another go. But if it feels like there's too many problems with the deck, then I'm going to put it down and I'm not going to play it. And it's something that takes a lot of reps and a lot of experience with Magic to be able to do properly.
Sure.
But you can supplement that a lot with doing things like, joining discords, talking to players that are more experienced and getting their perceptions on things, asking them what they feel is good and why, and listen to that kind of rhetoric. But it's important, it's super, super critical to ignore the people that are like, well, I 5-0'd with this deck, or I'm X and Y with this deck. And
it's basically ignoring results bias at the end of the day.
Well, like I just told you, right? Like insufficient sample size. Like no matter how, I don't care what X is and what Y is, no matter if you're, 50-0 with a deck, like, okay, maybe there's some merit there, but like still, like that is a largely irrelevant sample size.
Yeah.
And you just can't put a lot of value in that. And so the people that are like, I'm 23-4 or I'm 13-2 with this deck, like you should listen to me. Like that's noise. And you have to learn to ignore that kind of stuff in order to have good, productive conversations with other Magic players. And so I choose my deck a lot based on feel and on like the conversations I have with other Magic players that know how to talk in that same manner, that don't talk to me based on record. They talk to me based on their testing and how their decks felt.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think that's something that there's, and I fall into this pitfall a lot. I just want to play control, like and I feel like a lot of people maybe not with control, but like John is a deck that kind of, it's a meme now, right? Every John player has their deck foiled out. Like that's a meme.
Yeah.
But like, so like you gotta be able to, you gotta be willing to dip your toes into other decks and really kind of branch out.
Yeah, and honestly, there's nothing wrong with if you just enjoy playing that style of Magic, and it's more important to you to play Magic that you're having fun playing over like winning. Like for me, I'm in the points race, so even if I don't like the deck, like I played Hogak during the Hogak period, and I didn't like that deck very much. I found the gameplay incredibly miserable, but played it anyway because it was important to me to get those points. And I know that it's not going to be like that forever. Like if Magic were always like that, I wouldn't play it. But I know that there's going to be events later where I get to play Magic. I get to play things like Storm, which I love Storm. I was super excited to be able to play that deck in an open again. And so I had a ton of fun in Indianapolis. And it's those moments that really make the grind worth it. But there are times I have to do things that I don't super love to do, like play Hogak, in order to give myself the best chance of winning in a given tournament. But I mean, obviously having fun does have some impact on your win rate because you care more. You care more about proving yourself. You care more about playing your deck well because you enjoy it and you want it to be good. And so there's something to be said, but it's less than people think.
Yeah, and I think too, it kind of goes back to like what your goals are in Magic. Like, are you just here to play your favorite deck over and over again? That's great. If you're on the grind to become a sponsored player like yourself, and then maybe you should just bite the bullet or bite the Hogak and play the.
Play the Hogaks.
Play the Hogaks, yeah. So no, that's good stuff. That's good stuff, Drake. I definitely think that's a good take. But there's another question which you kind of already touched on. What are some tips to help the listeners improve as a Magic player?
Ooh, that's a good one. So the number one thing by a margin, a wide margin, that I see people, especially newer players, screw up is their mentality. Magic is far more a mental game than it is a physical, technical game. Like, I don't care how, like, there's players that are like, oh, I'm just not that good. I'm not going to be able to play that well. I'm not going to be able to do these fancy plays and come up with these super intricate lines. And I feel like newer players value that a lot more. They value making every decision right and playing quote unquote perfect, which we all know is impossible, but they value that kind of like playing as close to perfect as possible. And that's what they define as being a good Magic player. And honestly, that's not the reality. The reality is the most successful players, the players that just consistently perform over and over again, make loads of mistakes. Some of them even game losing. I've seen players, like, I mean, I personally have punted games, like completely just drop kicked a game and still won the match, still won the tournament. I drop kicked a game in Indianapolis. It was against Paul Muller. I threw game one, just completely messed it up. And it got appropriately punished, lost game one, but went on to win game 2 and 3. But what allowed me to do that was I didn't tilt off after the punt. I punted. I was like, okay, that happened. Now we got to work cut out for us. We need to focus, recover, be resilient, play games 2 and 3 well. Yeah. And it's all about that mental resiliency. It's easy to get burnt out, especially with a leaderboard race, by just like constant like focus on results, these specific goals that you have very little control over actually reaching. It's easy to lose focus on just trusting the process, trusting yourself to play the best Magic you can, and making it a true goal to just play the best Magic you can. Yeah. So if you want to be a Magic player, focus on taking losses well and make your goal for every tournament, just play the best Magic you can, because that's actually what matters. Your results will come as a byproduct of you doing that. If you do those two things, results will come as a byproduct, but you cannot focus on the results or they just will not come. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. One thing that really, really stuck out to me in that answer of yours was trust the process. That's basic. Like that is what I take away from that. And that's a great take, honestly, because we, Magic players, especially if you're trying to grind, if you're trying to become a grinder and become better, you do focus. It's natural, right? It's human nature to focus on those results, on even at FNM. If you go 2-2 at FNM and you're like, oh, well, this deck's trash or like whatever, like, well, let's have some, think inwards and think about how you could have improved the play, or maybe you just got unlucky. That does happen too. Now, a lot of Magic players like to blame bad luck too often, I think. But yeah, trusting the process. Like if you're gonna be committed to a deck like Jund or like Blue Eyed or Storm, you know, get good with it.
Yeah.
So,
and just because you like, you scrub out an event doesn't mean your deck's like bad. Like I've played plenty of events where I played the same deck as somebody else. I scrubbed out and they went on to top 8. And it's like,
yeah,
that's okay.
literally all
I
it
played
takes
the best.
is 2 bad matchups. If you get
Yeah.
2 bad matchups, that you're probably done, right?
Like how different would the narrative be if I had just played Burn 3 times in day 1 and just missed day 2?
yeah,
Like I actually think X3 would have made day 2. But like the point is, right, like what if I just played Burn a bunch of times with Storm and I was like, oh my God, Storm was the worst metagame call. Like,
right.
God, I just punted away so many points. Instead I didn't. And like that's not, yeah, that happened. And I definitely got lucky for that to happen. But overall, there's multiple things that came together in order for, me to set myself up to get lucky. And that's what Magic often is about, is putting yourself in the best position to get lucky. And that's where trusting the process comes from, is if you can repeatedly play your best Magic day in and day out, trust your deck, trust your deck selection process, trust your, mechanics, you will eventually get lucky. It's just it's a numbers game. Eventually you will play enough tournaments, you will get lucky, you'll spike something, you'll do well, you'll get where you want to be, but it takes time and it requires you to trust the process.
Absolutely. And that's one thing too, that like with the podcast and everything, I'm going to kind of talk about that, is like trusting the process. Like episode 6 was miserable. I had to re-record it a million times and I almost quit this whole thing. And, if I had done that, I wouldn't be in, you and I would not be having this conversation.
We wouldn't be talking about all these sweet decks, sweet Magic, and just having a great time.
Yeah. So yeah, shout out to Abby, who's my girlfriend. She told me, hey, don't quit. This is a good idea. So shout out.
Abby's very smart.
But yeah, moving on. We're going to get into more little lighthearted questions here.
Fair.
Who do you typically travel with when you're going to tournaments?
So I got a steady crew. So I am from Alabama, which isn't like known for its great Magic scene. We do have a pretty good scene here in Huntsville, Alabama, but like overall, like Alabama's just doesn't have the population to have a just wildly successful Magic scene like places like New Jersey, New York. But I do have a few committed players that I travel with. You have Zachary Cuck. He has 2 open top 8s in Legacy. He was the first person to get me actually going to opens. I was originally going on the PPTQ grind, and I was really burned out of that because the PPTQ system was terrible. And he brought me to like my first open in like 2015. It was ironically a Legacy open, and I missed day 2, right? But yeah, no kidding. And at the time, like I said, he had 2 open top 8s. So I really looked up to him, was like, hey, here's this player that I can learn a lot from. And so I had a lot of really impactful discussions with him that helped me get a lot better as a player. So I still travel with him today. Like I'll be traveling with him to, I believe, both Atlanta and the SCG Invitational. So that's exciting. I also travel with Michael Kidd. Just got second at the Knoxville Regionals with Jund. He's a Jund player through and through. He's that foil Jund player you're talking about.
Nice. Yeah.
He's my best friend from elementary school, actually.
And wow, that is awesome that you get to travel with your best friend from elementary. Holy smokes!
Yeah, I hooked him on the Magic a little later in the high school, and at first he was like, "Oh, I'm not going to play this," and lo and behold, here he is now. He just grinds tournaments with me. He's playing for a bye next year, so
and now his entire Jund deck's all foiled out. He's like, "What did you drag me into?"
Oh yeah, we got him hooked, and you can call me a bad friend for it, but we've certainly had some really fun nights, and we've definitely grown our friendship a lot by just sharing some of these memories through Magic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I got one more. His name is Mitch Stevenson. He's at WTF It's Not Butter on Twitter, and he posts a lot about Storm. He's the Storm guy. So he's Storm in every format. He just won the Vintage Challenge not too long ago with Vintage Storm. And yeah, he's Storm player through and through. He'll play it in every format he can. He's going to try it in Pioneer. He's going to try to make that Outcome Aether Flux Reservoir work.
1,000-year Storm, let's go.
Yeah, that's his background photo on Twitter is 1,000-year Storm. He can't get enough of the Storm decks. So
that's perfect.
Yeah, my crew's got their own brand, but they're great people, plenty of fun times to have, and it's important. The gathering part of Magic the Gathering is always the most important.
It's the best, man. Yeah. No matter how popular Arena gets or how many, games on Moto I play, nothing beats sitting down with some of your buddies in playing paper Magic.
You're absolutely right. I wouldn't do it honestly. If I had to go to these events alone, I would not still be grinding Magic tournaments. That's just factual. And they're honestly kind of the unsung heroes of like my Magic career is like the people that make it worth it, the people that make the long drives worth it, and the rough travel moments, and just they're the people that make it all worth it.
Absolutely, good stuff. So when you are on the road and not playing Magic at the venue, what are you typically doing? Like in between rounds, or even like, after the day's done, or before,
Yeah. So I used to spend a lot of time at like the vendors and the artists and stuff like that. And now I realized that with my ADHD and stuff, the context switching isn't very good for me.
Sure.
It was really bad for keeping me focused on playing my best and keeping me focused on my goals for any given tournament. And so I've stopped doing as much of that. Now I play a game called Love Letter in between rounds, which is a quick little pickup game you can play with, 2 to 4 people.
That is so funny that you say that, because Zach Allen, who was on last week's episode, it was his exact answer too.
I mean, I play with him a lot of the time. Like he and I have a lot of friendly banter over Love Letter. So he's involved in most of my Love Letter matches that I play.
That is awesome.
It's super fun. And it's a game similar enough to Magic that it's not really a context switch. And like I said, it's a nice little pick up and play that keeps you in thinking critically mindset. And
man, I've got to learn how to play this game. It sounds awesome. And
it's a lot of fun. And it's like I said, it goes so quick that it's really a ton of fun. And after the events, I mean, it depends. Usually I go out drinking with a lot of my friends, or we'll go out and get some great food. It's really important to me that the food is as important to me as the Magic, if not more.
That question's coming up. Don't worry.
Oh, perfect. And I've even gone to some music shows. Like I went and saw some bands in SCG Vegas. I went and saw a show in Baltimore. So I've gone to some music shows
Very cool.
the after hours of SCG opens before. So it's just kind of whatever people are down to do. I'm always here for the gathering.
Yeah. When I had a group, I had a car go to Dallas. And I was like on bands in town, just scrolling through. I'm like, okay, what can we hit up tonight?
Yeah.
And there was like, I don't know, I don't listen to country, and it was just a bunch of country bands. So like, I think like Georgia Florida Line was.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
I at least know that name. You go see them.
Not a fan of the country, but.
Yeah, it's all right. There's some country songs that are good, but the vast majority is not a good genre in my opinion. So it's a few diamonds in the rough.
Absolutely. So, you just kind of touched on this question, but where is your favorite place to eat? Just name your favorite place to eat that you've found on the road.
It's so tough. There's so many good places to eat. Do
you want to know Zach's answer?
Sure. What was Zach's answer?
Any Brazilian like steakhouse, basically.
That's such a cop out because they're like expensive. I want a place with character. And that's really what I'm trying to get to. It's like what to me has like memory, where like I'm going to a city and I'm like, we're going to this place. Like it's happening. Okay. Off the top of my head, there's a place in Syracuse called Dino Barbecue. And it's like the person that runs it is like from Memphis. So like I live fairly close to Memphis. I have a lot of barbecue, and it's honestly incredible barbecue. And I was not expecting that up in the north. And every time I've gone to Syracuse, it's one of the places I'm excited to go to when I'm like, we're going to Syracuse, we're going to Dino Barbecue. Like it's happening.
Absolutely.
This place is so good. And so that is probably one of my favorite places, just because like, there's a lot of memories of like getting big crews. They handle big groups well, and just getting some very good barbecue and just like good beer and just hanging out with friends. It's like that's a place that has a lot of character to me. It may not be the best place you're ever going to eat, but like it's very good food that's like worth your time, reasonably priced, and like has memories for me.
Awesome. Good stuff. So this is basically the last question I got for you before we call it a podcast. What are your other hobbies, or do you have any other hobbies right now? I know you're focused on the Players Race, but hobbies outside of Magic.
So like that's something it's nice. I'm glad you brought that up. That's something that doesn't really get talked about a lot when we talk about like this kind of Magic grind and professional Magic and content creation and all that.
Yeah,
is there's not a lot of time for other things. I do dabble in some Overwatch. I play with some of the other Magic grinders.
Okay.
And I do watch Overwatch League. I'm a Houston Outlaws fan. Ante up.
Dude, no way. Me too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I got my jersey in the back. I wear it every week on stream. It's great.
That's so funny. I have a hoodie. That's
Oh,
dope.
I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous. I've been meaning to purchase more merch, but I wear my jersey to work and stuff like that. So
That is
I get questions all the time.
that is so funny, man.
Love outlaws, but
Ante up,
um,
right?
ante up, baby. But that's basically all I do. Like I don't watch Netflix. A lot of people have that as their hobby. My
Sure.
wife loves Netflix. I don't really watch shows. I don't really watch movies. There's not a lot I do. Like I spend a lot of my time creating magic content, spend a lot of time testing magic, and like to relax, I often do things like play Overwatch or watch some Overwatch League. And those are hobbies of mine. But like in general, I'll go to music. Sometimes I'll go to music festivals and like
Sure.
music shows, but in general, I don't do a lot else. There's magic is definitely my passion, and that's why I'm able to do this. Like if I didn't like magic, I sure as hell would not be doing all this stuff that I
Oh
do
yeah.
for it. So this isn't something I'm doing just because it's profitable or because of that. I do all this because I love magic, and as a result, that's what I want to spend my time doing. I go to work every
Yeah.
day. I'm thinking about magic, and like I have Twitch streams on at work. That's what matters to me.
I
Is
think,
magic.
and I'm sure you would agree, I think you could get much more wealthy sinking as much time as I'm sure you do into magic doing something else.
Oh, absolutely. I tell people that all the time when they're talking to me about like how much money something makes or like maximizing equity on something. It's like, no, what matters to me is that making sure it's sustainable because magic is something I love and I would hate to burn myself out of, something that I find this much love for.
Absolutely.
And so I'm not going to put myself in a position where I can make a little bit more money just to like at the sacrifice of making me hate magic. And that's what drives a lot of my decisions is like if I'm having fun, if I'm enjoying it, like podcasting. I love getting on and talking to people. I would love to do a podcast, and maybe we'll do something like that in the future. But like
Yeah.
it's important to me that I have fun doing all the things I do for magic, or it's not going to be sustainable because the amount of motivation and time and effort and passion it requires to put this much time into where you're prepared for every tournament. You're really putting yourself in the best position to win a tournament. And also going and doing team stuff otherwise because Team Nova is sponsored. I got to represent the sponsors, talk about the sponsors. There's a lot of other stuff we got to do, and I really have to believe in all the things I'm doing, or else it's not going to be real. You're not going to get good content out of me. I'm not going to play well in tournaments, and that's a disaster scenario.
Right. And that for me on the content side of things is like I enjoy doing this. I enjoy editing the videos and the audio afterwards, and like if you're not into it, it will show.
Yeah, exactly. It's the passion shows through in magic content creation. That's part of what makes content in magic so great is that you
Yeah.
can feel other people's passion. It's super, super intoxicating, super contagious. And I mean, that's part of why I watch so much magic content.
Yeah. It's funny that I asked you a question about hobbies outside of magic and we circled back to magic because
Yeah,
magic is that great.
it is. It is. I had somebody talk to me about like other hobbies. And it's like, it's weird. Magic is such a big part of my life that I
Yeah.
would consider a hobby of mine, like cube drafting, right? It's
Right.
like, that's still magic,
Right.
but it's not like, it's not like a professional endeavor, right? Like
Right.
I treat all the constructed formats, standard, modern, legacy. Those are like professional endeavors. When I put
Sure.
time into those, like I'm preparing to do my best and I'm going to try my hardest. And like, I'm really going to put a lot of effort in. But like, if I'm cube drafting, I'm going to sit down and have a few drinks with some friends and we're going to cube draft. And that's fun.
Yeah.
And like, I treat that very differently and it has a very different spot in my life, even though it's still magic. It's almost like another hobby in and of itself. Like it's just
Yeah.
a sub part of my life that isn't as serious.
Yeah. I mean, there's a guy in St. Louis, shout out to Uzman. He has a cube and he just lets people play it for free and like it's a good time. Like
Yeah, cube drafting is incredible. It's probably the best format that exists because there's so much flexibility. It's just very hard to get a group together sometimes. When
oh
you
yeah.
do, it's always a good time.
Oh yeah. Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff, Drake. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Do you have anything you want to say? Have your Twitter handle or anything like that?
Sure. If you're looking to keep up with me, keep up with my content, you can always follow me on Twitter at Viral Drake. There's my pin post has links to all the other places you can find my content. And of course, shout out to Team Nova and all their sponsors. I definitely couldn't be where I am grinding magic without them. The support of my teammates, as well as any financial support they help me with. Really, really appreciate all that, and I'm really, really, really proud to represent them. So, shout out to Team Nova. And like I said, if you want to keep up with me and my content, what I'm doing, follow me on Twitter. You can always at me on Twitter. I'm happy to answer questions.
Awesome.
Happy to talk with you. Always love talking magic. So, I may not respond immediately, but I'll respond as quick as I can. And so, if you want to at me on Twitter, we'll have a conversation about magic.
Excellent.
And
Excellent stuff, man. Well, this was a lot of fun. Thank you again for coming on and setting the time aside for us. And yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in and listening. Again, this is the Control Freak podcast. It's on all the podcast apps, YouTube, and additionally, again, I did start that Patreon. If you want to check it out, consider becoming a patron over at patreon.com/lessalex. And as always, everyone, have a great night.
Bye.